오늘은 서울에 위치한 쿠바 대사관에 나와 있습니다. 카리브해의 푸른 바다와 뜨거운 열정이 살아 숨쉬는 나라 쿠바. 멀리 떨어져 있지만 한국과 쿠바는 오랜 시간 역사와 문화로 이어져 왔습니다. 한 세기 전 쿠바에 정착한 한인들의 발자취, 그리고 오늘날 K-문화로 이어지는 교류는 두 나라를 더욱 가깝게 만들고 있습니다. 최근 한국과 쿠바는 공식 외교 관계를 수립하고 대사를 파견하며 새로운 협력의 시대를 열고 있는데요. 하지만 국제 정세 속에서 쿠바는 여전히 여러 도전에 직면해 있습니다. 특히 미국과의 관계에서 비롯된 다양한 제약은 쿠바의 경제와 외교에 중요한 변수로 작용하고 있습니다. 이러한 변화의 흐름 속에서 쿠바는 어떤 길을 선택하고 있을까요? 그리고 한국과의 협력은 어떤 미래를 만들어갈 수 있을까요? 오늘 쿠바 대사를 모시고 그 이야기를 직접 들어보겠습니다.
Hello, Your Excellency, and thank you very much for your take time speaking for us, even though you are very busy schedule. It is truly honors have this opportunity to hear your insight. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much for having me here.
Actually, I'm very sorry I didn't have any experience to visit your country, but I'm familiar with your country. Let me talk about some questions.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Korea and Cuba formally established diplomatic relations. From your perspective, what is the most significant historical meaning of it?
Thank you very much. Yes, we established diplomatic relations on 2024, February 14th of 2024. But there were some exchanges before that, as you had already mentioned. There were mutual interest and there were contacts in areas like culture, sports, even trade, cooperation in late years. And there has been a growing mutual interest in each other. So I think the establishment of diplomatic relations is not necessarily a starting point, but it does imply the bilateral commitment of both governments to promote and to facilitate the further deepening of these bilateral relations and contacts between two people based on this shared or mutual curiosity and interest.
Thank you. Could you share your overall impression of Korea so far? And as the first ambassador, what has been most memorable moment, memory experience for you?
Well, I think everything has been memorable. My experiences are still insufficient. A year is not enough, especially because you have a very long history and a very rich culture. I still feel that I have a lot to learn. But I have found that you are a friendly people, open, kind, interested in other realities, including Cuba. And this is something very important from a diplomatic point of view because it allows us to find open doors and to establish a frank communication, and that's a very good starting point for our relations.
Thank you. And the third, what's your perspective? What are the key similarities and the most notable differences between Cuba and Korea?
I see. Well, I have to confess that after a year, it's becoming harder and harder to find differences because similarities are more visible. After all, we are all human and we have a lot more in common than differences. Of course, naturally, there are some differences because we have different geographical contexts, a different history, different language, different climate. That, of course, affects the cultures and make us to have cultural differences. But I think these differences are rather superficial, and what is essentially important on a human level, in that level, there are many, many similarities. I think that we both are open. I think that we are communicative people. I think we are interested in others' culture. And from that, for that kind of people's differences are not something that divide us, but something that interests us in each other. Something interesting, something to discover, something to explore. and something to learn from. So we have a lot in common. The differences that we have are a good thing that will allow us to have interest in each other.
What are the diplomatic priorities you hope to pursue? And how do you expect Korea-Cuba relations developing over the next 5 to 10 years? Probably in the future, so many things will be changed.
Yes. I think getting to know each other is in itself a very important goal, given that we are starting this process of bilateral relation. That includes understanding each other, understanding how each other institutions works, how each other diplomacy works, civil societies, and assessing what are the best ways of cooperating and developing this bilateral relationship together. It's difficult to foresee anything in such an uncertain world like this one we're living in. But we do believe that there are many areas where we can cooperate in mutually beneficial ways for our people. That includes culture, sports. We both love culture and sports. We have both many things to offer to each other in these areas, but also economic cooperation. We have had some good examples of this in the past, and I'm sure that in the future we will be able to develop this area too.
Here and there are many conflicts. Yeah, so like Iran and Ukraine. Actually, I feel very sad. There have been various reports in the media about Cuba recently. Could you briefly explain the situation about Cuba?
Of course. Let me just allow me to take a little time to do a brief historical explanation here, because I think that to understand the context, it's very important in order to understand what is going on in Cuba right now and to process the information surrounding that phenomenon these days. Cuba is a country which sovereignty has been contested by some inside our biggest neighbor, always. Since the 18th century, there were some important and powerful voices inside the United States that considered the island of Cuba, then a colony of Spain, should be controlled in a way or another by the United States. And naturally that has marked our history. In 1898, after 30 years of Cuban independent wars against Spain, when the Spanish army was almost virtually defeated and the Cuban independence was inevitable, the U.S. declares war against Spain and intervenes militarily in the war without Cuba's request, of course. Then they defeat what was left of the Spanish occupation army, and they take control of the island. What happened after that is that Cuba becomes a neo-colonial state, a neo-colonial republic, where U.S. kept political, economic, and many times military control of the country. The Cuban Revolution of 1959 put an end to that and finally meant the independence of Cuba. But it immediately triggered a reaction from Washington that has lasted until today. And its main tool has been this economic blockade, which in the words of the then Subsecretary of State of the United States was intended to weaken the economic life in Cuba, to reduce real wage, to provoke hunger, desperation, and then to provoke the overthrow of the government. And this process that has lasted more than 60 years now has been accompanied by a narrative from the government of the United States that tries to reverse victim and perpetrator. So in other words, blockades is intended to strangle us, but the rhetoric blames us for not being able to breathe, for not knowing how to breathe. This is very important to understand what is happening now, because the information that we receive about Cuba goes through this prism. And because distortions, omissions, and stereotypes are quite common, maybe, or sometimes even by people with good intentions, not necessarily bad intentions towards Cuba. So right now, Cuba is undergoing an extreme energy crisis that is caused, without any possible doubt, by an external shock. This external shock started somehow since the first Trump administration, where they applied an unprecedented number of measures to pressure Cuba economically, intended to disconnect us totally from the international market, and that has an obvious effect on the Cuban economy. Now, after many years now, since that measures were first taken, harming the Cuban people and Cuban economic life, but without accomplishing the goal of overthrowing the government, the U.S. administration has decided to apply a virtually total blockade of oil to Cuba, which has been accompanied also by threats of invading militarily and so on. That is exactly the meaning of this executive order taken by the President Trump on January 29, threatening to impose tariff to any country that sells oil to Cuba. I don't think it is necessary to explain what it means for a modern society to lack oil. It is not just the uncomfortable or irritating electricity cuts. It has to do also with the functioning of the food production, storage, distribution system. It affects directly the health system, and it affects almost every aspect of everyday life for the people. Despite this, I have to say that Cuba will resist, because the people know what is at stake, and that's our independence. And because this is not entirely new to us, in some way or another, we have been living under economic pressure for many years, for more than 60 years. We have also even experienced direct aggressions like the invasion of Bay of Pig in 1961, actually 19th of April, so we are commemorating the anniversary these days, a direct invasion of Bay of Pig. So this is not a totally new situation for us, even though it might be one of the most or the harder period in our history. But despite this, it is very important for the world to understand that this policy by the United States government is designed to make people suffer, especially those more vulnerable. This is absolutely illegal. This is absolutely inhumane, and this should not be accepted by the international community.
I totally agree with you. And you know, the other day we had a Zoom conference with all of the young people all over the world. At the time, some of the Cuba people attended the meeting. Then they said, like you, they didn't have any power, so they can't connect to the internet. So anyway, I'm very sad. Which area offers greatest potential for economic cooperation between Cuba and Korea? Actually, the young people or some investors really want to know about this problem as well.
I do think that in the economic field we have a strong potential for engagement between our countries. I think our economies can be complementary. There's a strong demand in Cuba for manufactured goods and for technology, and you have that. We have actually imported many goods from South Korea in the past, including power generators, which were installed in the early 2000s. And in our case, we are very, very well known for products like coffee, honey, cigars, rum, but also we have a considerable development in biotechnology. We export products for more than 70 countries, including South Korea. So that's also an opportunity. And in mining, for example, we are the fifth country by its nickel reserve and the third by its cobalt reserve, which are both elements that are important for today's economy. So those are things that could be of interest. Anyway, I have to mention also that the main obstacle here is, again, the economic blockade from the United States, because it not only affects bilateral relations between Cuba and the United States, but it also affects, or is intended to affect, Cuba's trade with third countries, and that includes, of course, your country. Anyway, there's also a phenomenon of over-compliance with these sanctions and measures of the blockade, and thus there are opportunities that could be lost. So we as an embassy have the task of explaining how to do business with a country in a safe way.
Many Koreans consider Cuba a dream travel destination. Are there any plans to promote tourism, such as direct flights and easier visa procedures? What would you say is Cuba's unique charm Koreans should experience? We are promoting tourism. I think in the case of visas, Cuban travel visas, Cuban tourist visas are quite easy to obtain because you can apply. They're electronic, so you can apply for them digitally through our embassy or just buy one from an agency that works with Cuba. So that shouldn't be a problem. I think a direct flight might be a very good step. I'm sure it's something that we will consider or try to promote in the future. It's not an easy thing, but I think it's feasible. Here, the main problem, again, has to do with the absurd inclusion of Cuba in the so-called U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism, which is, I want to explain this, but it's absolutely unfair, unjust, and politically motivated. But the thing is that it means that everyone that visits Cuba loses its ESTA. So they have to apply for a visa for the United States. So this is naturally this incentive to visit Cuba. Still, there are many travelers interested in Cuba, and they still go to Cuba under these conditions. And we will continue promoting the destination. I think we have many attractions of different kinds. We, of course, have beautiful beaches in the Caribbean Sea. We have cities full of history and with architectural riches. But I think the main attractive of Cuba is its people and its culture. We like to describe Cuba and culture as an ajiaco, which is a soup made of a lot of different ingredients, sometimes leftovers, but it's pretty tasty and it has a very unique flavor. So that's the word we use to describe Cuban culture, because Cuba is a very cosmopolitan culture made by the mix of different peoples that migrated to Cuba, mainly Spain and Africa, but also because for centuries we were a transit hub for people traveling between Latin America and Europe. So I think you can notice the influences of those cultures rich in different origins in our music, our cinema, our literature, our dance, and our culture in general. And I think that is something that makes us unique, but also make us easy to communicate with the rest of the world. And this is something very important for tourism as a attraction. You did mention earlier about some tradition and old style, like old car, old cities. Yeah. And very paradox. America, USA tried to make a sanctioned economic or something politically. But Cuba preserved such a great thing, I think. Yes. Yeah. Many Korean people try to take a look at such a thing as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Cuba is widely known for music and artistic tradition. Where do you think the strong cultural identity comes from?
Well, yes, I think I already answered that question in the previous one, but I think our Cuban culture is, the Cuban music is the result of that mixed influences by many different cultures and many different musical styles, because it's the result of the different traditional musics brought by slaves, brought as slaves from Africa, Spain migrants, other migrants of other areas of the world, including Asia, and all those different influences came to Cuba and built something unique and absolutely Cuban. And I think that's the origin of Cuban music. And we have a lot of different, we have traditional music, but we have also classical music. We have jazz. Cuban Latin jazz is quite famous also. We have pop, we have rock, we have rap. There are many things in Cuban culture that connects to the world that could be interesting. But I think the origin, the source of this is diversity, all in the same place and all having become the same culture.
There has been growing interest among the Cuban young people in learning Korean. What do you think is a driving trend? And what can be done to change between the two countries?
I think the K-wave has been a huge phenomenon worldwide. I think your cultural industry has been extremely successful in promoting your culture abroad, and this has also attracted many Cubans to South Korea. There was a very interesting program organized by your Ministry of Foreign Affairs to commemorate the first anniversary of bilateral relations that consisted on connecting young people from both countries, and at the end they brought a delegation of about 20 young Cubans to Seoul. I think this is a good example of what can be done from an official point of view, but I still think that the best way is to promote tourism, because there's nothing that can substitute the direct experience of someone immersed in the culture. So I think that's the way to promote these exchanges between young people.
During your tenure as an ambassador, is there a personal goal you hope to accomplish?
Well, there are many. But my personal priorities would be to learn as much as I can about your history and your culture, and also to learn some basic Korean language, which I don't know if I will be able to, but I will try my best on both cases.
Can you speak Korean one word?
Yeah.
Except 감사합니다.
Of course. Well, the 친구, it's a good word.
Oh.
But I know some, but I cannot speak yet. I will try.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Finally, as Korea and Cuba begin the new partnership, would you like to share a message with the Korean people?
I think Cuba is a very interesting country with a deep culture. We're warm and friendly. We have a unique reality that is worth discovering, and I'm sure we have a lot to offer to you. So I invite you all to take interest in my country, in Cuba, and I am absolutely sure that you won't regret it. Thank you very much.